Hello and welcome to Getting Started.Life on the WGSN-DB Going Solo Network, where we talk about new ventures, getting started, the 5 steps that you need to do to get started in a new venture, and the one big mistake. We've got a great guest today, Cary Bailen.
I'm super excited.
Super excited because a lot of people, when we were saying like what's a good topic, right? When we were polling people, they said eating right? Everybody wants to start eating better. So Cary's going to be on right now. There she is right now to talk a little bit about how to get started eating right and changing your diet. And she's got a real compelling story. I go way back with Cary, and she's the reason that she went in that direction is really fascinating. So Cary, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Is a certified health coach and wellness consultant at Simply Health. And I'm just going to turn over to you because it is a really compelling story on how you decided to kind of change your eating habits.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Like Doug said, we go way back, actually all the way back to high school.
Yes,
and particularly high school Latin class. And
wow.
Yeah, it's so funny.
See, I'm learned. I'm very learned.
So I don't know how much of the Latin I'll be able to bring into this, but I have definitely learned a lot more about nutrition. So, Doug, you may remember that I played a lot of sports, particularly a swimmer when I was growing up. And I always was really into, being athletic and, of course, whatever the fad diet was at the time, right? Because unfortunately, girls always think that we're fat. We always think we're fat. So I was always looking into, even though I was athletic and I was doing all this working out, I was always just caught up in whatever trend diet there was. I can't even begin to tell you all the different diets that I have gone on. And, you always have that, you have that success, but then you end up rebounding and you end up kind of gaining the weight back, and it really wreaks havoc on your self-esteem because you keep thinking like, well, what am I doing wrong? I must just not have good, strong, willpower and all these different things. And, so I think what Doug is referring to, how things really switch is, for me, it was unfortunately because I was diagnosed with lupus, which for those of you who don't know, lupus is an autoimmune disease. And it got, so after I had my son, I was bedridden for a couple of years, and it took me a couple of years to even get the diagnosis. And I had a super healthy pregnancy. I mean, I thought I was like a really good, healthy person. But what I realized is that I was just very active. And, I might have looked like I was a healthy person, but I obviously wasn't healthy inside. So when I got the diagnosis of the autoimmune disease, they basically told me that I could be on medication for the rest of my life. And I was just like, yeah, that doesn't work for me. I am way too young to have to go on medication for the rest of my life. And so I really just like did a 180. And instead of focusing on like the so-called diet foods, right? Like eating low fat and low carbs and whatever, marketing was out there that was kind of getting us to eat certain ways or whatever the trends were. I kind of just like bypassed all of that and started to recognize and realize that food is meant for fuel. It can be extremely healing. And when we're eating the right foods, it can do so much for your body. So we can kind of talk a little bit more in depth about that. But I love your topic of like, how does one get started, right? So really one of the first things that I like to share with people is just keep things simple, make one simple change at a time. We don't need to like go into this huge, massive overhaul and just completely revamp our diets, because then it becomes undoable. So, I can go into a lot of detail. I don't want to just sit there.
I know. We'll keep it on track in terms of that. But did you have somebody who mentored you? So you were obviously dealing with some pretty significant issues and trying to figure out like what's the deal with this. Was there someone who said, hey, have you thought about diet? Like, have you thought about
Yeah.
what you're putting into your body?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So a little bit of backstory. I had already, at the time, I was actually in the process of designing an award-winning comprehensive health education curriculum. And so I was starting to look at, just health in general. And I was kind of starting to dissect the difference between and self-esteem, because this was comprehensive health. So it's not just about diet and exercise. It was also, there was other factors that went into the curriculum for these schools. But, it started out what I started to realize on my own. I did a lot of self-studying. And what I started to realize is that there was so much more to food. Like, food isn't the enemy. So often we all have relationships, like poor relationships with food, right? And food's going to make us fat, and this type of food is a no. And, it absolutely drives me crazy. I'm going to say this so many times. Fruit does not make you fat, people. Fruit is okay. But, we get all these different things in our minds that just kind of say, that make us feel a certain way towards food. So I had started to research and started coming across a lot of really neat naturopathic or Eastern medicine approaches, Chinese traditional medicine. It just intrigued me. So I started reading all these books, and it just became very interesting to me. The concept of, Western medicine, there's amazing things. Thank goodness we have Western medicine, and we can get the care that we need when we need it. But I also realized that it was going to be a Band-Aid approach versus a long-term approach for what I was looking for. And I did not want to go down the road of having to be on medication. So I have a naturopath doctor that I've now been working with for, 18, 20 years now. And she is, no, probably longer than that. It's crazy. But she's like a second mom to me. I trust her and believe in her so much. And I did a lot of work in the naturopathic, field when I was getting healthy. And so that is one topic I can say that I can truly help people to help mentor and navigate and consult.
Right.
How to be a better advocate for themselves, and to not just take a diagnosis as like face value.
I do have one question though.
Yes.
If fruit is not bad for you, if it is covered in chocolate, does that still count?
Hey, it depends on what kind of chocolate
If
it is.
it's dark chocolate,
Dark
yeah,
chocolate, and again, it still depends.
Caramel, maybe not so much, but
what's that?
I said caramel, maybe not so much, but definitely.
Yeah, maybe not so much, and yeah. So, but Doug, way to throw off the topic.
There you go. Now, but wait, on a serious question though, there's so much information out there, right? Like it would be intuitive to me that kind of that first step is like, which way you're going to go, right? Because you walked a certain path. But where's a good place for people to start if they're like, hey, I want to start eating better? Keeping it simple totally makes sense. But like, how do you make, I can tell you, like when I go on watching something on YouTube, all the commercials are like, because I look at a lot of fitness stuff. It's like, oh, how do these guys get ripped? Like they, eat this way and they do this, and you get all this crap. And there's so much crap out there. How do you differentiate?
So first of all, you got to keep in mind that marketing is marketing for a reason, right? And so you go to the grocery store and you think you're reading labels properly, but you're just not, because you're reading what the companies want you to read. Fruit Loops, believe it or not, does not have any fruit in it. But the way that they kind of market things when you're going down the grocery aisles, it catches your attention, and you kind of start thinking that you have an idea. So I know exactly what you're talking about. You go into the one-stop nutrition, or the GNCs, and you think you're going to load up on all these vitamins. Here's an interesting tidbit. All the vitamins that have been out there for eons, there has not, all the published or all the research that they have done, there has never been one single study that shows that any of these vitamins, particularly like say a one a day, or your actual daily vitamin, that it's done any good for the body. However, if you research vitamins, it'll actually show that there's research showing that it can do more harm to your body. And the reason that is because it's man-made and it's fragmented. So your body doesn't quite know what to do with it. And it kind of gets, sometimes you just pee it out, which is fine because that's water soluble. So you're just peeing it out. But then sometimes it adds to the toxicity in our bodies. And toxicity is something that I really want to talk about in a little bit more. But, how do you make that first change? To be super honest with you, that's why I do what I do, because it's very hard for people to know what is the best way, how to start. And so as a certified nutrition coach, I can help people with where to start. And usually how I do that is I really do, I do an initial consultation and I listen to everything that they've done, kind of just the things that they have tried and what works for them, what doesn't work for them. But then I can start to break things down. And when I say like making one simple change, so for me, it's about ultimately I want to leave someone feeling like they have a variety and abundance of things that they can eat, because diets are about deprivation, right? It's like, oh, I can't eat this anymore. And I'm, now I've got to do this 6 weeks of, just hell. And, I hope I can stick with it. There's a lot of pressure and there's a lot that goes to it that really is going against what their ultimate goal is. So what I try to do is break things down and make it really simple. So it might be, but our bigger goal is to get out the processed foods. And the reason that's so important is when we are eating all the foods that we're eating, and we're eating these diet foods, and we're eating these different things that go into our bodies, what happens is our body doesn't recognize it as food. And so it gets, our bodies has to store it in fat cells so that it can protect its organs. So that's why a lot of times, people that are on these diets, they can't understand why they are having, they're not losing weight. They're getting stuck. And it's because they're still eating these diet foods that are really highly processed foods. And they're filled with chemicals and preservatives. And, like one simple trick that I always teach people is start reading the ingredient label instead of, how much, like what is actually in a food item versus what is actually, how many fats there are. Who cares? Don't worry about that right now.
Right.
Don't worry about the carbs. Like worry about what you're eating. Is it even food?
There's a crazy, like I just went to visit my daughter last weekend or 2 weekends ago. And we were out shopping and I grabbed some like sugar-free jelly beans. I don't know why I bought that. I never do, but I ate them and, I had a couple handfuls of them and it was like I was getting ready for a colonoscopy. Like it was terrible. And then I looked it up because I was like, this isn't normal. There's a warning label on it.
Yes.
It was crazy. There's a warning label on what I bought, like to start with 8 pieces because it could totally jack up your GI system, which I can speak from experience that it does. But it is interesting when you talk about that. But I do have another question. So when you're talking about like your initial consultation, it seems like getting started eating right is as much about that as shutting down the bad habit of eating wrong.
Absolutely.
And when you talk to people like who quit smoking and quit tobacco or quit whatever, a huge component of that is really wanting to, right? Like I used to, when I was in the Army, I used to smoke this tobacco like it was terrible, like a tin of Copenhagen a day. And then one day I was like, this just isn't smart. Like I'm going to stop doing it. And I quit overnight. People are like, how do you do that? I'm like, well, I wanted to. So is part of your initial consultation really getting at whether they truly want to or whether they're like, it's a good idea, so I'll do it, but they're not committed?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's all part of it too. But a huge piece of it is kind of like what you're alluding to, Doug. And that is, I have clients that range from everything. I have elite athletes that are already on a really good path. They just need to fine tune. And I have people who have just atrocious diets. So sometimes it's literally like, I have to like see where they're at currently. And then my goal, part of what makes me successful in what I do is you always want to like push someone, right? Like no one's paying me. I mean, people aren't paying me money to have the same result. People are paying me money to have results, but it's a fine line between, pushing so hard that it's going to make them quit, versus and then giving them enough information and enough to work with so that they can start to instill change. So going back to what you're saying, right? Like if someone's drinking sodas and, you know, alcohol every night, and they're drinking coffees, and they're, you know, they have all these already bad habits, we might spend time on just cleaning up. Like, what are you willing to kind of like cut back on, and as far as that goes? Other people, like, they eat out every single solitary day, and it's like, I can't work with getting them to get off gluten and dairy. I'm just trying to help them clean up and maybe start eating some healthier versions of going out to eat. So I really have to work with where people are, and take them to, you know, what each next step would be for each person. So
is it safe to say that first step is really finding an expert? Like I do mortgage, right? And I tell people, go to an expert. Like, don't try and do this crap yourself. Is that what you're kind of saying? Is like the first step is don't try this. Find somebody who's respected within your circle of friends and your sphere of influence, and somebody who you can trust, because you're going to probably spend more money and waste more time and money trying to do it yourself.
Absolutely. And buying all the unnecessary things. And, you know, like I have a very one simple change. Like, let's just start to change things simply. And then I also have like different programs that I can put people on. But it's so individualized and customized for people, depending on where they're at. And, you know, our diet culture is really about the one size fits all, right? And it doesn't. We're all so unique. We've had past experiences. We have our own medical backgrounds, or medical histories. You know, we have so many things that make us unique. And so you really got to start with making it individualized.
Okay.
You talk about the diet culture. What about the people, and there's a lot of them out there, who are starting a diet on Monday?
Right.
I'm going to get through the next couple of days. I'm going to start it on Monday, but it's every Monday. Every Monday, they're going to make this big change. Every Monday, they're going to, you know, drastically overhaul their eating, but they just don't commit, or they do it for a couple of days and then that's it.
Well, and so that's a great point, like a really great point. So what if there was no diet that you were about to be on? What if you were just making a few small changes that didn't really impact anything, and you could start today, and over time you're going to have results? So there's not this, like, because the starting on Monday mentality is like, oh my gosh, starting Monday, I'm giving up everything, right? Like, yep. I'm gonna fast. I'm gonna intermittent fast till 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and then they have a real sensible meal, but they don't even really know what a true sensible meal is. They're cutting out all fruit, right? Because that has sugar in it. So it's like, what if we could just start with you right now, and I could start teaching you some things. And one of my favorite things I enjoy doing is called Eat This, Not That. So say, for example, Doug, are you more of a sweet person or a salty person?
I'm kind of in the middle, but it's the same way that because I lost a bunch of weight a couple of years back, and it's pretty much stayed off. It was sort of like just kind of being sensible. Like, I took a lot of the processed crap out of there. I did a lot less, things that weren't there. But, I kind of like flavors. And I find for me, and this just works for me, is having flavorful stuff, to include things that actually have a good amount of fat in it, allows me to eat less than the stuff that's engineered to not have certain things in it. So right. I do both. I'm a better example. Maybe Mariah's a better example.
I'm salty. You're salty. I don't care about the sweets. I care about the salty.
Okay, so then what I would try to do is see what type of salty foods that you're eating. So say maybe it's like potato chips, like your go-to potato chips, right? I might try to start to sub out, like, okay, can you maybe not eat the Lay's potato chips for a week, but let's have you, add in some pumpkin seeds, and then, put in the sea salt and kind of flavor it up how you like. So you're getting that salty sensation, but now you're eating true, like a whole food. Because I'm a big pusher on eating whole food nutrition versus like all this like processed crap that's out there. So it would just be like, okay, so what do you like? You know, okay, you like salty foods. Well, let's see what kind of salty foods that we can we can add to your diet. And notice I'm saying add, not take away.
Yep.
Right? Because when we take away everything, people feel deprived and they no longer they feel that diet and it's like, okay, I'm going to start on Monday. I'm going to start next Monday. But when we're just adding in good foods and we're eating this, not that, but it's still the same concepts, you don't feel deprived. Like I have a really strict diet per se. You know, people look at me and they think I'm deprived. I love the way I eat. I can go to any restaurant. I can go socialize with anybody. It is never an issue for me about food is not an issue for me. Now, I want to make sure that I have the foods that I need to nourish myself and take care of myself, but it never gets in the way anymore of feeling like, oh, I'm so deprived or, you know, and to be super honest, like I never weigh myself anymore. I don't do any of that because it just once you start to get those those habits and you start to realize that you're fueling your body with good nutrition, everything else kind of comes into play.
And I'm going to hold that thought. I was going to try and recap the steps, but we got to go to a commercial real quick. So we're going to go to a commercial break, and then we're going to come back right after that, kind of recap where we're at and hear about the other steps.
You're muted.
I'm muted?
Nope, Doug is. I can see his hands moving, so I know he's talking.
I'm muted because there's a hot mic and my dogs are terrible. So we're listening to Getting Started.Life on the WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. And to recap, our guest today is Cary Bailen, who's an expert in eating right, basically, and changing your life and changing your diet. So just to recap, and it sounds like there's, sort of a couple of different components of how to get started. And I don't know if necessarily it's got to go in the right order, but it sounds kind of first like find the right person to help you find your way. It's kind of step one, and then come up with a plan. It sounds like you're kind of about like coming up with you started with keep it simple, but a simple executable plan that's right for you, and then moving forward with that plan in a logical way so that you're not necessarily depriving yourself of anything. Did I miss anything out of those first few steps?
No, I think that's actually really good. And just keeping in mind that, this isn't something we want to get out of the we're depriving ourselves mentality, and really that we're fueling ourselves, right? And, another little analogy might be, when you put good fuel in your car, you're going to have, your car is going to last longer. But, we got to really think of, it's so hard because we just, everywhere we go, we're being told, oh, if you do this, if you do that, like keto is a huge trend right now. Everyone's doing the keto diet and people are having results. You will have results when you do these diets, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be long lasting. And it definitely doesn't mean that they're healthy for you.
So then what would be the next step once they've got somebody to help them, or the information and the plan that they need to do going forward?
So then, really it's about, like, for me personally, I customize a plan for people depending on where they are. So, let's say someone, is drinking sodas, but they're committed, right? They want to make change. That's why they've hired me and we're working together. So, it might be like, are you willing to cut out sodas for a week? And also, might you be willing to start taking a look at what the ingredients are in your pantry or, wherever. And I also provide recipes. I'm really huge in providing tools for people. And a huge part of what I do is educate. So I'm not just going to tell you to do something. I'm going to teach you why I'm having you do something. And I also want to teach you to fish for yourself. So, I don't, these, I have one client right now who just bought a whole bunch of stuff from a company I won't say, but it's all pre-made foods, right? Well, first of all, the pre-made foods are filled with chemicals and preservatives and things that no one can even recognize when they read the ingredient labels. But also, it's like, you're not learning how to make simple meals. You don't have to be a cook, because trust me, I am horrible. I hate it. It's not my forte. So I'm all about like simplicity. That's definitely one of my big things. So yeah. So after we kind of like distinguish what, where people are at, then we would start to customize and create a plan. And so for some people, they're going to be cutting out. Some people are ready to cut out quite a few things, but I add in other things as well. Kind of like I was saying with that whole eat this, not that. So we kind of just start to customize it with that. But ultimately, over the course of time, I want people to start realizing and learning on their own what things that they should be going for, so that they don't need me to be telling them, okay, should I be doing this? Should I be doing that?
Now, I have a question. How important is the feedback loop, right? Because when I lost that bunch of weight, like, I was using one of those programs just to track my diet and my calories, right? And for me, I just gravitated toward what would fill me up, but meet my caloric numbers, right? Where I could say, okay, I would eat like a bowl of salad, like a serving bowl of salad, and, had minimal calories, and I could do that. But what I found was it was really, really effective, but it was really hard. Like, I got really tired of like, what am I eating? I'm going to scan this in. Finally you're like, holy crap. And like the minute you stop doing it, you're like done doing it, and it's harder to go back. But it wasn't like a diet, right? It wasn't like I'm going on this bad diet where I've got all these things. It was just a matter of like tracking what I'm eating. And then it just got, I don't know, and again, it was effective. It seemed like it was a good, like, shot to get to where I kind of wanted to be, but right. I kind of liked where I was at that weight. And now I'm like, oh man, I'm not going to do that again, because it's kind of sucked.
Well, yeah. And so there is kind of that whole accountability piece in the beginning, where you're doing that more to get yourself into habits, right? But once you kind of know, and you've been doing it enough time, then you don't necessarily need it. So for me, I like to stay in touch with my clients as often as possible in the very beginning, so that, we're in that learning phase. They're in that I'm teaching and they're learning phase, and they're really starting to pay attention to they're asking me questions. I'm answering questions, but I'm having them kind of go hunt for it as well. Like, I'm a huge stickler on, you take your own notes based on our conversation, because if I just like handwrite notes and I send everything to you, then you're not learning how to really go out there in the world and do it on your own.
So is that like an official step though? When somebody is looking to make this life change, is part of what you require them to do is keep a journal or take notes, or, everybody's different, right? So
everybody's different.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
everybody is different, because here's the thing. If I have someone who's willing to do X, Y, and Z, but like note taking is going to just like throw them over the edge. Like, I'm not making someone take notes. Like, it's just not worth it. So I literally, there's terminology, of course, a student motivational interviewing. I thought I was going to forget the word motivational interviewing, right? It's like I'm working with individuals to ask them questions so that I can see what they're motivated to do, what is going to keep them going, and then not push them past that. Because once you lose somebody, it's very hard to get them back.
Interesting. So, okay. So then they've figured out what they want to do and gotten the right person. They've come up with a plan and they're tracking it to the extent that they can. What do they do next to be successful?
So you kind of keep practicing it, right? And then another huge piece that I would say is a important part of all of this is, like, when you're working with someone, is make sure you feel comfortable with them and that you feel safe with them, that you don't feel like there's any judgment, right? And so that's what I always establish with everyone, is that I've been down every road and then some. So there's nothing you're going to say that is going to make me sit there and judge you, right? Like, that's not my job, is to judge. My job is to actually help you. So the more open you can be, right? Because there's a lot of shame around food and diets and weight and all of that stuff. But if we can be real honest and you feel safe enough to share with me, and I always say to people, you're human. Like, if you're not going to do this all perfectly, there's no such thing as doing this perfectly, right? You're here to learn, you're here to grow, you're here to try some things out. But along the way, like, try to have fun with it. Like, don't have this be this like really horrible, hard process. Like, I want you to walk away with having learned a few new tools and a few new things that you can be successful with in your life. And just like all human beings, you're gonna work with me. You're gonna have success for a period of time. But that mind, unfortunately, there's a lot of stuff that's in there, and we get bombarded by all the new marketing things. So it's like, oh, well, maybe I really should just be doing this. And so,
well, I've got two questions, because Mariah and I do a lot of business in the divorce space, and it seems to me like many, you probably have some couples that come together, but you probably have a lot of clients that come singular, or singularly, I guess. And then they're trying to manage to do this. Like, I could see this being like the basis of people getting divorced sometimes, because they're in such a dietary, what's in that house is kind of what they eat. And then, if the person who is making the change was also the person cooking before, then that would really change what's going on in that household. Then, like, talk a little bit about that if you come across that at all.
Well, for the most part, it's always been a positive, when people have, say they're married and somebody is ready to make a health and wellness commitment to themselves, and they start eating healthier and choosing healthier, groceries and meals and things like that. I have seen that a lot of times the other spouse will jump on board, and that they're mostly supportive. That the family and friends are mostly supportive with what the changes are that are going on. I have not really come across, and then sometimes there are households where, they don't want to have to change, and so they're still eating the junk, and the other person is wanting to, make the changes, and it does make it harder to have all the other junk in the house. But, I kind of work with them through that too. So, but I get what you're saying, Doug. Definitely.
I have a question. You talked in the beginning, like when you're getting started, to make small and simple changes. And I think that that's like really a good starting point for people. If you could just universally create like 2 or 3 changes for people and their diets, what do you prioritize in terms of those small changes?
Yeah, great question. Okay, so first and foremost, I always say up the water game. right? It's like a lot of times it can be that simple. I know a lot of good people, a lot of good water drinkers, but there are plenty of people that just are not getting enough water. And it is something so simple that can help you increase your mood, your energy, you know, just something so simple. The other challenge that I would put out there for people listening today is try to get rid of the gluten in the dairy. Like really,
Man, you
like
can't
it's
take my
just,
cheese.
I
I'm
know.
tired.
I know it seemed really impossible at first. Trust me. I thought cheese, what was that saying? Cheese makes everything better.
Yeah.
That was my motto in life for like ever. And now it's like the thing that just like probably grosses me out the most. Like just
Really?
yes, because of what I have seen it do to people's intestines and their GI tracts. And you know, we're not getting into that today, but I would say that, you know, and so here's an example. People are like, oh, but I love pizza. It's like, great. I love pizza too. I eat pizza all the time. Here's some ideas on how you can still eat pizza and still have it be gluten-free and dairy-free. And I will say that there's a lot of restaurants and a lot of places that are starting to catch on that the more plants you eat, the better. Now, of course, I will do a quick little plug for myself too. One of the greatest things and easiest things that I love is adding in more fruits and veggies. The more fruits and vegetables you can eat in your diet, the better. I mean, just load up on those things. You can't eat too many fruits, and you certainly can't eat too many vegetables. Some people aren't a huge fan of fruits and vegetables, but there is a product that I swear by, and it's called Juice Plus. And Juice Plus is 30 whole food fruits, veggies, and berries in a capsule form. And the way that they actually get that is, so they've got their own farms. It's better than organic. It has an NSF label on it, which is the highest form of labeling you can get. And so the farmers actually pick it at the ripest time. And right there, not going to the grocery store and staying on the shelves, but right there, they actually will juice it. So you're getting all that high nutrient dense produce. And then they pull out the sugars, which is great for diabetics and other people, the salts in the water. And then they put it through a low temperature drying process to preserve the nutrition. And they encapsulate it in a vegan capsule. So that is one of my simplest things is you're just adding in all that great nutrition. And when your body has that great nutrition in your body every single day, you cannot even begin to imagine how much better your body can function. The metabolism can start to work better. You're starting to detox, and not the type of detox that poor Doug had with the jelly beans. We're talking like a really gentle detox of just
exciting.
pouring in the good. And ultimately, now here's something too. The Juice Plus actually has 40 peer-reviewed, double-blinded, gold-sealed standard, published in major medical journals, what it does in people's bodies. So everything from lowering, cholesterol levels, improving skin health. There's just so many different cardiovascular health. There's just so many different studies. But I just love, and one of them too, which is really cool, is that it metabolically reprograms your body. And so basically what that means is people who don't really like fruits and vegetables, which is why I'm bringing this up to begin with, it's, if you don't like fruits and vegetables, you don't want to eat fruits and vegetables. Like that's hard. When you eat the Juice Plus, and I say eat because it's actually whole foods. It's not a supplement. It's not a vitamin. So you're eating it, even though it's in capsule form. It's been proven in these studies that it'll actually help you to start craving healthier foods because your body's now getting all that good nutrition.
Well, and that makes sense because I've read stuff where like McDonald's, I'll pick on McDonald's because that's what I read about, but a lot of fast food places actually engineer the food.
Yes.
For people to crave it. And what do they call them? Users. They don't even call them whatever, clients. They literally, it's just like they track it by how much they eat, and they design it for people to eat more.
Exactly. And then there's another really interesting study that I think is really exciting for people, and it's certainly hopeful for a lot of people with, diseases and hereditary, and I'm living proof of this. Is there's something called epigenetics, which is basically the studying of the genes. And what it's saying is, and this was studies, there's epigenetic studies going on all the time, but Juice Plus has done a lot of the epigenetic studies. But basically what it's saying is when you're eating a diet rich in really nutritional dense foods, fruits and veggies, things like that, you can reverse the DNA damage in your body. So you're basically flipping on a switch when we're eating our poor diets, right? So like there's arthritis and, different things that have run in my family. And so I kind of already had that precursor of a gene disposition to turn on that gene, right? And so I flipped it on through, being stressed out and overdoing things in my life. So the beauty is when we can do really great stuff for our lifestyles and our nutrition, we can turn that switch off, which is why I've been able to be so healthy. And
I've seen your progression, through social media and all that kind of stuff. And it has been, you look different. Even just your demeanor online and stuff is just different. But before we run out of time, I've got two questions. First, what is the biggest mistake? Like what sets people back and creates failure when they're trying to make this life change?
I think sometimes it's just a mindset that they're not doing it perfectly, and there is no perfect way to do this. It is a journey, and we have such stories in our heads about, what we're supposed to look like and what we're supposed to, how we're supposed to eat and all of that. So I think one of it is just your mindset that puts us back into like more of a failure, but also just getting off the diet mentality, the hamster wheel of dieting, right? I'm going to start on Monday. I'm going to start on Monday after the holidays, and just giving ourselves these nonstop excuses for why to not just start.
Got it. Well, no, that makes a lot of sense. So the other question I have, and before we run out of time, is it seems like when I've done stuff like this, I'm fine until like I go outside my protective bubble, right? Like I travel and then I go somewhere and it's a mix of like, oh, it's a pain in the ass. And, man, that looks good. Like I'm not in the place that I am where I'm in that mindset. Now I'm in a different mindset or a different place, which allows me to be in a different mindset.
Yeah. So, but remember, you're human, right? So It's okay.
Well, that's debatable with some people. I know and things like that.
True.
But
I might be able to speak on that, but but if you think about it, truly, it's like, it's okay. It's okay to have wandering thoughts and
right.
Wanting to try this, and it's okay to actually do it as well. But when you've done it long enough, you start to realize you have those instant reminders, like, oh yeah, I don't feel good when I do this. Like, why am I doing this again? So for me, it's like instantaneous now. Like when
food hangover, right? Where you're like, I'm not.
Yeah, it's just like you just feel like crap, and it's like, do I want to feel like crap? Not really, but sometimes it's you're just like, I just so badly want whatever that is, and you're like,
right.
It's worth it. It's worth feeling like crap for a minute, But when you kind of get that momentum going, you don't do it as often.
So kind of to recap, it seems like, there's not necessarily as defined, like we have other guests on the show, it's kind of like really defined, but it seems like this is so individual to the person that the steps are, fairly well defined, right? Like figure out what you want to do, write a plan, get the right people helping you and monitor and feedback. But really, this is about finding what's right for you. Otherwise, it's not going to stick.
Yeah, I think absolutely. And, it's just exactly. It's so individualized, which is why I pride myself on doing what I do, because anyone can go find how to track your macros online. Anyone can figure out what calories you need to, eat. Anyone can look up whatever, the latest fad diets are. But you know, it just, my approach is different. It's definitely different.
So, if people want to get hold of you again, and remember, because I forgot this earlier, I was on someone's show earlier, and I forgot that this will also be all audio in one place. If people want to get hold of you, what's the best way to get hold of you?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the easiest ways to get a hold of me is just email me. Email me your questions. Email me, you know, whatever it is.
Real quick, what's the email address so we don't end the show without?
Oh, sure. CEB. So Carey, Elephant's Boy, PLH, Peace, Love, Happy at yahoo.com.
I like that. And then it looks like your website's www.simplyhealthconsulting.com. Does that have all, that has all your contact info there as well?
It does.
Awesome. Well, you know, I can tell you, great having you on the show. We, you know, I think this is a big one for people. I don't know anybody, even anybody who, like, people who are even healthy are always looking for ways to eat healthier. Yep. or hacks out there to make it enjoyable when they, you know, when you're kind of working around how our society is built around food. So right. Thank you so very much. Hopefully some of the listeners will reach out to you. You've been listening to Getting Started.Life on the WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. If you know of anything that you want to hear about for getting started, let us know. We'll find the expert. If there's something you want to get people started on, reach out to us. We'd love to see if it works for the show. And listen to us every other week on the WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. Cary, thanks so much for being on.
Thank you guys so much. It was so fun.
You got it. And we'll see everybody in 2 weeks.
Great.